you've got sort of this sort of weird sort of hybrid experience where it's this between being there and watching it on TV, but then you have this point where you can have access to the talent and the athletes. You know, the WWE does these meet and greets, and they charge a significant amount of money for people to come in and talk to the wrestlers. I mean, if you're a fan, you want to be as close to the players or the talent or the athletes, you know, whatever that is as possible. And this, done the right way, this is a really interesting solution for that, especially in something that's very low latency where it's immediate feedback. So it's like you're having a natural conversation with somebody as you're there, but you know, you're on a display, and it's really exciting stuff. And it's just sort of the tip of the iceberg.
You're listening to Sports Tech Feed, the global sports technology podcast.
Hello and welcome to Sports Tech Feed. I'm your host, Thomas Alomes. Great to have you join us again this week. On today's show, we have Greg Harvey, Partner and Chief Innovation Officer at the Famous Group. As CIO, Greg has led the transition of the Famous Group from a traditional creative services company into a forward-thinking creative services technology business that develops and owns several software platforms and solutions. These platforms include Vixi, a real-time social display application powered by Unreal Engine, Virtual Seat, a cloud-based enterprise solution that delivers large-scale audiences virtually into live broadcast events, and something we talk about a lot today, as well as the company's new mixed reality solutions. Greg's role includes discovering new technologies that can be integrated into the company's software platforms and solutions, building technology partnerships to further expand the company's products and services, integrating Unreal Engine across the company's software and creative services, and implementing a robust, remote, cloud-based production pipeline. He's also the face for innovation for the company, so it's great for him to be appearing on the show and for us to be chatting about all this stuff. It's certainly something that we were kind of incredibly lucky to be able to condense down into a podcast, because it's chats that Greg and I have had that just span hours about the future of the industry, the future of the kind of physical digital divide, where fan engagement's going, and then the important question around how do you actually monetize this? Because at the end of the day, someone's got to foot the bill for all this cool new cutting edge stuff. So here it is, Greg Harvey from the Famous Group. Looking forward to speaking with you again at the end, but over to Greg. Greg Harvey, Partner and Chief Innovation Officer at the Famous Group. Welcome to Sports Tech Feed. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Thomas. I'm super excited to be here. I can literally talk about this stuff for hours on end, so it's great to be able to sit here and chat with you. You know, just really quick for those who don't know the Famous Group, a little bit about our business. You know, we've been in business for about 24 years. Started in doing in-stadium content for professional sports. So back at the time when we started our business, if you had gone to a game, the visual experience, I mean, these were dot matrix boards. I mean, these are before, you know, actual, you know, full color video boards. And if you went to the arena, the in-game experience was very poor compared to like what you would see on ESPN or Fox Sports, where everything was branded and looked really polished, and it was kind of a whole branded identity. So that's kind of where we got into it, as we approached it from sort of this broadcast brand identity. And that's how we started our business. So we started, our first client was the Clippers, and we just grew from there. And if you fast forward to today, we're the largest provider of that kind of content, you know, for all kinds of sports around, you know, MLB, NHL, NFL, you know, MLS, like all the leagues, like, you know, we're really deep entrenched in producing all that content. And then we really got into the software side of things, you know, sort of always looking forward, you know, when social media became a huge part of, you know, a box to check, you know, within the game experience. So sort of aggregating and delivering social content onto the display boards in venues. You know, there were some companies starting to come in, and, you know, I'm a highly competitive person. So I was like, oh man, you know, that's taking up some of our real estate on these screens. We better figure out a way to get involved in this space. But, you know, we come from this broadcast production, you know, 3D, high-end graphics and stuff like that. So social display was basically two-dimensional tweets and photos on a video board, typically web-based. And we approached it from using a gaming engine to make it feel like broadcast graphics. So we started this whole journey on developing software. We ended up getting a couple of patents. And then, you know, before you know, COVID kind of happened, we were on this mixed reality journey where, we kind of see this as the next evolution of pulling the graphics off of the flat 2D video boards and really creating this really immersive experience, within the physical stadium. So I know everybody talks about this merging the physical and digital and, really what that is, but mixed reality graphics to us was really this next generation, kind of the AR graphics that you see on broadcast, but bringing those into the venue and having the fans there experience that. So we did that big Raven at Baltimore that went viral on Twitter and all over the internet. And then we did this big Super Bowl all-time team show, the 7.5 minute live mixed reality broadcast, which was the 7.5 minutes of the most stressful time, ever, because if anything goes wrong there, you're in big trouble. But, that's kind of, where we sort of netted out, before COVID was going on.
And that was something we spoke to Tim Tobito just after that happened. So director of a presentation for the NFL, who was partnered with you, or I guess you were partnered with him for that from the NFL side. So if anyone wants to go back and listen to that episode, can hear about how that came together. And obviously very impressive, that augmented reality experience for the fan. And so, as you said, you've been in the experiential business for over 20 years, creating these immersive fan experiences. How did 2020 and COVID-19 shift from creating an experience for a stadium full of fans now to a position where you don't have any fans and slowly they're coming back?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing was terror because, I thought we were done. Like, our whole business is based around live events. And, when, you started to see everything closing, we had a big activation that we were supposed to do at the draft when it was in Las Vegas. And, one thing after the next started shutting down and, it was just sheer panic. It's like, what are we going to do? I mean, our whole business is based around people going to stadiums and, providing those kinds of services for teams and leagues. And, it was, and lucky for us, I mean, we had started this around 2015. We had started sort of this software sort of tech side of our business. And so we were fortunately kind of positioned, if we had just kept being a traditional production company, we wouldn't have survived. But we had this, we were talking with, speaking of Tim, we had a call and it was like, well, what are we going to do for the draft? Because, they basically switched it to sort of this online event. Roger Goodell was going to be in his basement. They were going to do. And so we kind of started this iteration process of like, what kind of fun things could we do? Maybe we could do some AR experiences when the players come into his basement. We can put like their team hats or jerseys on them or confetti, or do something interesting where, it's just not a person on a screen and him talking there. And then I just happened to mention, well, what about if we brought in actual fans, on some screens into the basement, and they can interact with him. Of course, at the time, we had no idea even how to do that. It was just one of those like, just riffing on sort of trying to ideate. And then Tim was like, oh, that's awesome. Let's go down that path. And we have a partnership with a company called Quinst Imaging. We do a lot of projection mapping shows with them, stuff like that. Really smart guys. And so that kind of really, really tipped it off for us. I mean, they figured out an interesting way to do that, and a very low latency sort of system. And we were able to bring in those fans, and we came at it from this production side. So it's kind of audience managing. So making sure that they were in the team gear, that they were pumped up, that they were excited, that they went in there. It's a much kind of different experience than, in my opinion, of that NBA bubble that, teams did, where it's sort of a software as a service model where you just put the people in there, but it isn't really, they're really not immersed in the show part of it. And that's sort of, where we came out of it. And I don't want to use the P word because I don't really like that word, pivot, but, from there, I mean, we were just, we picked up this WWE project to do the Thunderdome. And, they're somebody that, at that time they were like, either we're having 100% fans or we're having no fans, and we're going to try to make something that makes the NBA thing look like a kid put it together. And their whole thing is these big immersive shows with it's all the storytelling and the good versus evil, and the fans, without fans in wrestling, it just looks like really bad theater.
Yeah, and the fans with signs and the interactions and the reactions.
Yeah.
And stuff
I mean, pull all the fans away from that, and it's like two guys jumping around on a mat. I mean, it's not to downplay. It's an incredible business and a sport, but with the fans are such a critical component to that experience. And so again, it was one of those things like, we don't know how to put 5,000 people in a video cloud and stream 1,000 people at a time, down there. So it was just a lot of like, that was a very difficult, short amount of time to put that system together. But, we work with a company, Quince, and Frozen Mountain, that does the video cloud, and then a registration system that was on AWS. And we were able to put this thing together and iterate on it. And we just finished our 75th show with the WWE. And they Stephanie McMahon actually said that, even when they do go back in end of June or July, that they're going to move forward with some kind of hybrid. I think they really saw the value.
And that's something I want to jump in on, touch on it. We're going to, I guess, talk about the Golden State Warriors Dub Hub in a second.
Yeah.
But that idea that you need your fans in a stadium for a complete product, in the sense of how it feels, the atmosphere it creates, that was obviously highlighted by COVID. But what was also highlighted was the fact that the majority of your fans will never be able to experience that. And that's something that I think sports is such a laggard, I guess, has taken its sweet time and kind of coming round to that idea that, well, we just offer the in-stadium experience to people that are physically there, and we just sell them a ticket, and then we upsell them on everything else. And that's how we get revenue. And we have, as you said, the brand exposure, everything else. That's really shown to be a fallacy. There are so many fans, especially the globalized nature of all these different sports, that will never be able to experience it in person. But that doesn't mean that you can't draw them into the experience and then also monetize that experience. So, I mean, for that side of it, where do you see basically that monetization coming from? That ability to have virtual fans there, but then monetize it?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the thing about the globalization is really true. I mean, all sports have a global fan base. I mean, the WWE, for example, is huge in India, and we actually did an all India show where it was geo-located basically to India. So that entire show was all the fans from India, and that was that's something that you could never do before. That just wasn't there. The technology wasn't really there to figure that out, and the ability to do that. And then from the monetization side of it, this stuff is all brand new. It's kind of like, this, you hear this all the time. It's like this technology was sort of coming, all of this new tech, but COVID, sort of the opportunity, when something like this happens, that everybody sort of jumps on this and it really gets accelerated. I think the monetization part of it is very interesting, because there's sort of this, and people are trying to figure this out, is like, do we sell tickets to these virtual experience? And when you're selling a ticket, somebody expects something, much more polished, they expect a lot more from it than a free, the WWE is open. There's a registration system, and when it fills up, it fills up. And then inside there, they're selling merchandise in there. So they're selling like specific sort of merchandise. They promote other shows. And then they basically built this database, because when you register, they get your email. So they have a database for retargeting. So they're able to retarget merchandise, experiences, back to that group of fans. Now, it's not a huge group of fans. I think it's over 500,000 people have kind of registered and gone through that. But, that is something to say, because, in an arena, you're only limited to so many seats. And this is an opportunity to expand that seat and really bring in. And I think, there's the second screen experience, the watch party, but the unique thing is to actually get into the venue and see yourself as part of the venue. I think that's really awesome. Like you mentioned the Dub Hub, and the thing about the Dub Hub, which is really cool, is there's these screens where the players come out in the beginning of the game in the tunnel there, and the fans can talk and interact with them. And for a fan to be able to talk to Steph Curry for a few minutes or do that, that's an invaluable experience to somebody. It's really like this, you've got sort of this, this sort of weird sort of hybrid experience where it's this between being there and watching it on TV, but then you have this point where you can have access to the talent and the athletes. The WWE does these meet and greets, and they charge a significant amount of money for people to come in and talk to the wrestlers. I mean, that's part of the whole thing, is being, if you're a fan, you want to be as close to the players or the talent or the athletes, whatever that is, as possible. And this, done the right way, this is a really interesting solution for that, especially in something that's very low latency, where it's immediate feedback. So it's like you're having a natural conversation with somebody as you're there, but you're on a display, and it's really exciting stuff, and it's just sort of the tip of the iceberg. So really moving forward, it's kind of like all of this is paid for by sponsorship. And I think Golden State is another good example of that, is that when they signed up to do this, they sold it as inventory to their sponsors, and they actually sold out of the inventory. They ran out of the inventory over the course of the year with sponsorship. So sponsorship, they made, I think, around 3x on sponsorship. So, again, it's a pay to play business. I mean, if it doesn't generate revenue, if it doesn't give something for sponsorship, then teams or leagues typically won't buy it. I mean, it has to generate income.
Which is key of that fan engagement. I think people bandy around the term fan engagement, and can be very nebulous. And if it's hard to measure and hard to quantify and hard to monetize, then it's probably not adding as much value as people claim it is. In the sense of, well, fan engagement, it's great, we're going to bring our fans in, all this kind of stuff. You can go, well, that is fantastic. But as the sports industry has also seen, you need to make money to survive, and you need to make money to thrive from this. So if you can sell in further tickets or sponsorship revenue through these activations and through these virtual seat experiences, then that's a very clear, compelling case for them to be rolled out across different sports. And it's interesting you mentioned, not only are you limited in a stadium to how many seats you can fit in there, but also your sponsorship revenue, inventory. So the amount of advertising hoarding that you have to sell, the amount of experiences that you can brand for a sponsor, the amount of elements of that whole game day that can be sold. So this is another way to increase and amplify that. And also, as you mentioned, with geolocating, something about engaging local sponsors as well. So WWE, you have an All India night. Well, if you have that branded with a local sponsor in India, that's gonna, that's another pool of sponsorship inventory that you can activate.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, the WWE was saying too, this is really something that they want to get into, sort of this next generation of fans, which are, this is the way, again, there's, the world has changed. You've got, the gaming industry, and this younger generation of people are used to using Discord and video chat and, playing games with their friends and going into Fortnite concerts, and it's like, my kids wouldn't have known who Travis Scott was unless, he was in Fortnite. So you're exposing this whole new generation to, and sports, I think, has this kind of issue. It's kind of, where this new version of, humans are basically, using their screens and devices to talk to each other and do all that kind of stuff. It's like, maybe going to a physical event is a special occasion, or, something that they would go to with their friends. But, a lot of this next generation of people coming up will experience, physical events in a digital way. It's like before, it's like this, you had your physical event, and then you would have some kind of maybe digital activation or some kind of experience around that. But now these things are in parity, like this kind of, idea that a virtual experience isn't as important as a physical experience, I think has gone away. I think the virtual experience and the physical experience have value. And especially there, people have realized that this virtual experience I can do a lot with, and maybe in some instances more than I can with a physical, because it's like, one, it's expensive to go to these games, it's a lot of, effort, and, there's the diehard fans, but what about all the other, fans that are more casual, that maybe just want to hang out with their friends and watch some of this game and then do some fun things and show up on a screen inside the stadium, to get their little, a few seconds of fame, like, hey, I was there, I got to do that. And that has a lot of value. Like the people that went through the WWE and get on the broadcast, they love it. I mean, they think it's great, because even in the physical venue, if you were to go there, you don't really get on TV very much, so it's really it's a whole different experience.
And interesting to say about this, the new humans, I like that as a term for younger generations. Certainly anyone for kids feels like they are new humans in terms of trying to associate and connect with them sometimes, because it is just a different mindset. And I'm probably on the cusp of that, but much younger generations and kind of teenagers and the ones that are coming through that, that something like Fortnite would target, see the value, the inherent value in digital assets. So buying a skin, paying real money, converted into V-Bucks to buy a completely virtual digital skin, clothes, whatever you want to call it, they see value in that. Whereas other generations, old generations, generally cannot wrap their heads around it. I think one of the easiest ones to grasp is probably something like streaming, Spotify. I pay a monthly fee for access to digital music. Whereas when that was coming out, it was, well, why would you do that? You want to pay for the physical CD, vinyl, tape, whatever era you're coming from. But the really one that the kind of the mind bending, melting one that everyone's trying to grapple with at the moment is NFTs, the non-fungible tokens, like going this digital asset, whether it's a piece of art or a LeBron dunk or highlight, how is there value in that? And I think these kind of younger generations coming through they get it much more easily, understanding that has value for the same reasons that any other kind of collectible does, in terms of scarcity, in terms of something unique, in terms of associated with something that is very important and valued to them. And obviously sports, being able to connect to that is one of the most obvious ones, in terms of, if I'm a mad fan of the team or the athlete, I can see the value in owning something like that.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, it's such a crazy time with all of this sort of emerging technology, and this NFT stuff literally just came out of nowhere. And it's been around for a while, but I think the idea of these digital, again, it's about content, and I think from the NBA's perspective, they have this content, and it's how do you monetize this content in a new way. And there's people have been collecting trading cards and collectibles and bobbleheads and all kinds of stuff. And again, this is just the new world. It's like, it's a digital first. My son's Fortnite account was hacked, and to get it back, I had to go back and send whoever it was, who's managing this stuff, all of the receipts and everything that I had purchased, the whole purchase history. And when I added it up, I had spent over $3,500 in skins. And I was like, wow, that's something else. But then you think about it. I mean, this is their identity. I mean, they play these games and they earn this stuff, and it's a big part of who they are. This digital world with digital clothing, and you can see this all over the place. Fashion, it's all going this way. Probably in the future, Nike will sell more digital shoes than they probably will physical shoes. And so, I feel like there's a lot of, also in tech, there's a lot of FOMO, like everybody, somebody's getting into the NFT, and then everybody has to get into NFTs. And before you know it, your grandma's making NFTs, from her knitting collection and, selling those on, whatever the foundation app for $800,000 for some reason. But
so what do you think's here to stay? Like what is going to be the Beanie Babies of the 2020s? Something where it's just you have the boom and the bust, and there's a craze, and it kind of just slumps off the other side. And what's going to be sticking around? What's going to be, well, this has genuine value? Is it more just not necessarily the NFTs and the collectibles themselves, but more the underlying technology and the way that you sell digital assets? Is it kind of one of those things that you buy a digital seat, a virtual seat, and I mean we're using digital and virtual interchangeably here, because in terms of definition of terms, it's an absolute nightmare, because everyone's got their own kind of version of what they think. But let's stick with, say, virtual and digital, one and the same now. I buy an experience to a virtual seat at WWE. I get to meet and greet with one of the wrestlers. And then as a token of the kind of fantastic experience I had, and as a memory, I get some sort of digital asset, whether it's a ticket or, customized photo, whatever else that is. Is that kind of where you see that sitting, I guess, as valuable, if not more valuable than the physical version of that, where I go to the stadium, I pay for VIP seats, and I get my game ticket afterwards?
yeah, I think that, and I listened to a panel that some people from the NBA were on, and what they were saying is Top Shot is really kind of this first phase into what they're calling this sort of next version of a digital ticket. I mean, right now a digital ticket is maybe something that's scanned and you have it, on your phone, and you show it at the stadium. But what they're talking about is like this digital ticket that is trackable. It's kind of like this, the non-fungible token, right? There's an authentication process to it. So if I get this digital ticket, I can tie experiences to it, but then also from the league and team perspective is that ticket can be tracked into the secondary market. So for example, like that example that you gave, I go to a game, I have my digital ticket, there's an experience that comes with it. Maybe a virtual seat is built into that I get also. Maybe I get a highlight clip from that game as, an NFT. Or I could take that digital ticket and sell it in the secondary market. And the team now knows, because right now they don't know where the tickets go. So they would know, oh, okay, this ticket now sold, the face value was X, it sold for Y. I make money off of that. And then, somebody in another part of the world could buy the NFT out of that as well. And then I make money off that too. So it's an interesting sort of, future revenue generator. And because these leagues and teams have all of this content, and why not maximize that and, sell as much as that as you can, and, really grow this. And it's also has a lot more reach doing it that way. I watched that Beeple who sold that JPEG for $69 million. And what's interesting is that the artists retain the copyright of an NFT. So, and there's a certain commission that you get. So if somebody was to turn around and resell that, say for 200 million, the artist still gets 10% of that revenue as it's resold. And so that's very interesting. I think the leagues and teams look at it from that way, is that if that ticket's resold in the secondary market right now, I don't get a piece of that. I get a piece of that. These NFTs, I can, they're authentic. I know who has them. I know when they're resold. I know when they're traded. So I think it's a very clever way. I think a lot of the rest of this kind of stuff, will probably, and typical, all this kind of stuff, 90% of it will just evaporate. But I think from like a collectibles, ticketing, and, brands that are trusted, can really take advantage of these blockchain tickets and NFTs and, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and tracking it across, I mean, knowing their fans, as you said, most sports teams these days wouldn't necessarily even know who's in their stadium. If you're talking about the most basic level, someone buys 5 tickets for their family, it will look like, middle-aged man buys, 5 tickets. If they're looking at their audience analytics and stuff like that, it's like, well, it's just one and the same across that but being able to understand individuals and how that moves and how that tracks. And as you said, seeing content as the asset itself as well, rather than just reruns or highlights or something like that. In the very traditional linear broadcast, you will consume this and that's how we do it. It's going, well, how do you personalize it, turn that highlight into a package, and be able to have that owned by individuals that can relive that. And that's something that people go, well, what about display? It's like, well, we are living in a digital world. People go, well, I can't put my NFT up on my wall with my piece of art. Okay, you're kind of not getting it if that's where you're coming from. In the same way that we live our lives so much online, in digital, with our social media presence, all that kind of stuff. We are digital creatures in that sense. So why is that any different for how we present ourselves and things that we own, that we push forward in that way? So I'm kind of really interested to see how, I guess, that merging of the physical and the digital is happening from that arena experience, from that stadium experience, back into people's living rooms. Do you think it's going to be one of those ones where it is always the pinnacle to be in the stadium, or is there a chance that just the access, the kind of experience from home can eclipse that?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, human beings are very social creatures. And I think there is something to the spectacle and the excitement. It's really hard to, replicate that kind of being there, or being at a concert. There's that certain energy and, connection that you feel, when you're there. It's a very, visceral experience. But I do think that, a second, again, there's only, 20,000 seats, that you could go to, or, 30,000 seats. So there, as you've seen sort of the broadcasting change, this really emerging of all the streaming, and then this layer of interactivity on top of the streaming. So the idea that, I can, if I don't go to the game, I can go into this viewing party experience with, 10 of my friends. I can switch, there's some interesting things. I can change camera angles. I can, chat with my friends in video chat. I can buy merch. I can do, there's just all of this stuff is just happening so quickly. And I definitely think, there's all the betting, this whole betting that's, coming online, all of that stuff's going to play a big part of this. And I think this, this OTT, the second screen experience stuff is going to explode. I mean, from esports to, traditional sports, it's going to be big. It's going to be really big. And I think, in the next 3 years or so, a lot of this whole enhanced, whatever this, again, these terms are so broad, but this kind of enhanced viewing experience is really going to be a standard. And, that's the way, people are going to really enjoy this stuff, because you need the social. It's not cool to watch a live event by yourself, from your house. I mean,
yeah,
that's the thing. It's like, if you can get together with your friends and you can see each other on video and you can watch, and, all the stuff that goes along with that has real value. And I think people, that's really enjoyable. And, I don't know if it's enjoyable as, a full replacement for going physically, but it has a huge place in the future for sure. Yeah.
And I think, to your point, also why things like virtual reality, in the sense of strap a headset on you, never took off. And I personally don't think it ever will in sports, and I'm prepared to be proved wrong, but it drew you out of that social experience. If anything, by trying to give a very, very high-tech, super immersive view of the game and experience of the game, it pulled you back from all the stuff that make that game immersive, which is, as you said, the social element, being to interact normally with other people. So that's something that I think sometimes a super high-tech solution to something that isn't necessarily, like, doesn't need that, is sometimes a trap that is fall into as well. I mean, obviously the back end of what you do is incredibly impressive, as we're talking like something like Thunderdome, being able to stream with near zero latency, all of those different views. But the idea is, well, we just put people in front of a camera and they can interact. You don't need to strap VR sets to 5,000 people.
Yeah, and and the internet is changing a lot too. The internet is not going to be two-dimensional for much longer. I know that there's that term, the metaverse, but that's really happening. I mean, this whole idea of downloading apps and the kind of stuff that you're going to be able to do in a web browser, from experiences and immersion and interaction using gaming engines, running from the cloud, this whole, it's all going to change. I mean, the e-commerce experiences, entertainment experiences, the way you see and interact socially on the internet is going to be 3D. It's going to be immersive. It's not going to be the two-dimensional what you see now. It's going to change, and it's coming soon. It's like there's a lot of people putting a lot of time and tech into these sort of real-time 3D immersive experiences running in a web browser that you don't need to download an app. Runs on your phone, runs on your tablet, runs on your desktop. And it's all powered by cloud computing and streamed down to your device and into the browser. So there's a whole world of like possibilities coming, again, from like this sort of second screen experience. What is it like to virtually walk into a stadium without using VR through your web browser and meeting with other fans in there? You kind of see this in this virtual event space, again, in that events business, when all the events were canceled, all of these virtual platforms popped up for events. They're in all different sort of shapes and sizes, from this hop-in platform to, there's a platform called Pixel Canvas and another one called Surreal that are doing, real-time streaming, and you can walk around and interact and engage with other people and pick up things in the environment. You feel like you're there. And again, that's going to translate a lot into these sort of second screen sports experiences where you could actually walk into the virtual version of the stadium like a Fortnite, but just in your browser.
Yeah.
And, talk to other people, and maybe you have an avatar, maybe you don't, maybe you, it's a whole, and, again, there isn't a silver bullet to solve all of these, sort of the way you engage with fans, or, technology is just technology. If it, without like a use case or something that's useful, or a narrative that makes sense, or a really way to bring people together that's easy to use and very social, all of this stuff, because also, again, in this business, there's like the teams have their apps, the leagues have this, then you have your social apps, and you have all this other stuff. And it's like this overload of like, I got to open up 5 different apps during, this experience, or I got to download something. And so, you hear again all that talk about things that are frictionless, like being able to move from one experience to the other. And I think we're just kind of on the tip of the iceberg from that as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And the ability to seamlessly integrate across that. That's something that's being talked about a lot in sports betting is, watching the game, placing a bet, or watching the game, getting odds on the information I want, and placing a bet. And there's also lots of other applications across e-commerce, for instance, watching the game, getting targeted with merchandise, looking at merchandise, sizing, payment, delivery, and being able to have that without having to, as you said, go to different locations, all that kind of stuff, just trying to integrate that and really streamline it, which will happen. Consolidation will happen. It is happening at the moment. And it's just got to wait and take time, I think, because as you said, there's a lot of different fan engagement, in air quotes, fan engagement solutions out there. But at the end of the day, fans want it as a tool for consuming what they want to, which is their sports. It is not in and of itself what they're attracted to.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they want it to be a social experience and something that's personalized. I think, again, the technology that we have allows you to have something very personalized. If you're into Steph Curry and you're watching, in the Dub Hub, in the future, you could roll over and click on Steph Curry and get all this additional information, get merchandise. There is some really valuable ways to use a lot of this technology to really personalize the experiences for individual people, whether that's access to the player or, they get at the, an end of a experience, they get a highlight reel cut together that's of their favorite player, as an NFT, like you mentioned, that they can keep as collectible and hold on to. So, really a lot of these tools, put together the right way, allow for a really personalized and social experience, which I think is what people really want. I think that's like, when you go to the game, it's all about, I'm here, I had these experiences, I share these experiences with my friends, either through social or with my friends that I go with. And I think there's a lot of opportunity with this new type of technology. That's kind of the stuff that could be replicated, I think, in a very powerful and meaningful way that one, really enhances the individual fan experience, but also allows the teams to really know the fans better and to monetize a lot of this sort of new next generation of, the way people are engaging. And there's a lot of opportunities for teams to take advantage of that. And, it's all about, at the end of the day, it's all about making money and generating revenue, and just listening to the NBA, they're really smart about that. And I think Top Shot is a great example. And, the other leagues are going to come on with their own NFT stuff, behind there. And, it's a really exciting time for sure.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And final question for you, Greg. What's your most favorite sporting moment of all time?
My favorite sporting moment of all time? Oh boy. I think it was when Tiger Woods won the Masters for the first time. I play golf myself, and it's very difficult sport. And there was just something about how, he revolutionized that sport. Just his power and his game was just so far beyond, what any other golfer had done. The fitness level, just the entire sort of thing. And when he won, I thought to myself, wow, that's literally incredible. Like, and also it's very disruptive. I feel like the same with Lewis Hamilton in Formula One. I mean, that guy is such a, excuse my language, badass. And, just to come through that and, all the challenges and roadblocks that you face, and to be on the top of your sport like that, like Tiger was, or like, Lewis Hamilton, is in Formula One, is just really incredible. I mean, those kind of things really show you like the power of the human spirit and just, a dedication to a craft and being just, to be the best in the world at something is unbelievable.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, both great examples of athletes coming through and breaking down barriers and performing at the highest level in traditionally conservative kind of.
I mean, I think that's really the magic of sports. I mean, I think that's really, really what makes sports so special, is those, like you said, breaking down barriers and those stories of just overcoming incredible odds to, be at the top of something.
Yeah. Great. Well, it's a great note to end on. Thank you so much, Greg, for your time today. It was really interesting to listen to your thoughts on that. I mean, the Famous Group are doing some really cool stuff, and always enjoy following what you're doing. So looking forward to seeing what's coming next.
Yeah, thank you. It was great. I really appreciate it.
There you have it. That was Greg Harvey, Partner and Chief Innovation Officer at the Famous Group. A really cool company doing some very cool stuff in this space. For anyone that would have seen their mixed reality presentations with the NFL, or more recently the WWE Thunderdome, which we did speak about, and the Dub Hub, all that kind of stuff. If you haven't seen it, go check it out so you can have a bit more of a sense of what you've just listened to kind of visually, because it is very impressive. So they're definitely a company to keep an eye on about kind of what's next, really pushing the envelope constantly on where all this is going. So great to have Greg's time. And thanks to you again for joining Sports Tech Feed, the Global Sports Technology Podcast. Until next time.